How can couples learn to disagree in a healthier way?
Yes. So you can learn to disagree with your partner in a healthier way by doing a couple of things. One, listening to what they're saying, as opposed to, you feel your blood pressure go up and you feel sort of elevated and escalated and you wait till they take a breath and then you get in there and you get a zinger. Well, that's not a good way to do it, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to take a deep breath, right? And you want to try to focus on listening to what your partner's saying as opposed to defending yourself or rolling your eyes or sighing or insulting your partner, right? Take a deep breath. And the other thing, and you'll kind of sound like a little bit of a therapist here, is to reflect back what they say. So your partner's like, I'm so sick of this. I've asked you multiple times. You keep leaving your socks everywhere and not emptying the garbage. And I'm so frustrated with this, right? And you take a deep breath and you say, you're frustrated that I keep leaving my socks everywhere, right? Is that what you're saying? And the partner says, yes, can you please stop doing that, right? And it sounds very therapist-y, but what it does is the kind of restatement part of that is one, it makes sure you're actually understanding what your partner is saying, right? As opposed to going off of emotion. Two, it allows you to regulate and your partner to regulate, and it allows your partner to feel heard. It also gives you a moment to come up with a response, right? Lots of couples theorists will talk about this, John Gottman in particular, accepting responsibility for your part of the conflict. You're right. I have been leaving my socks on the floor. I can look at that, right? So accepting responsibility for your part of the conflict. Whenever you put but in something, obviously it erases what you said before, right? And one of the things you can say, can you please stop putting your socks on the floor? You can say, I can accept responsibility for that. Thank you for telling me that. It's hard to hear. I'd like to ask something of you. Would you be willing to modify your tone? I don't respond well when you come at me like that. Would you be willing to modify your tone? I'd love for everyone to tune into the way that I'm speaking. The way that you speak to your partner always matters. If you are short or angry or insulting, what happens is you don't get hurt, right? They disconnect from you or they respond to you in a defensive way. That deep breath that I suggested before brings the temperature down, and a softer, slower paced tone of voice sets things up in a way where your partner can actually hear you, right? We respond to tone more than we respond to anything else. And so I think it's very, very important. And sometimes couples are like, well, it's not that big a deal. It actually is a really big deal, right? If you want to be heard, you really want to modify your tone and your pace, not in a condescending way, but in a way that brings the temperature down. And the other thing that I would say is during a conflict, give your partner the emotional bridge. Tell them where you are emotionally. So you can say, that's really frustrating for me to hear, right? I can hear that you're irritated with me, and it's frustrating for me when you speak to me in that tone, but I can also see why you're annoyed with me because I did leave my socks on the floor and I agreed to not do that, right? So if you hear my tone of voice, it is more receptive and inviting of dialogue than a fight, right? And so I really want you to think about being softer in your approach with your partner. The expression you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar is really, it really matters here. So modify your tone, try to approach each conflict as a way of learning, even when you're hot and you're elevated, and you'll probably have better results. And it will help to preserve the emotional connection between you and your partner as opposed to ripping you apart. You can still preserve the emotional connection with your partner even through disagreements if you do it well, but it's often something that we have to practice. We have to be more mindful of. None of these things come naturally, right? And doing it well preserves the emotional trust and bond between you and your partner even through difficult times.